Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I have a 4-year-old named Kylie and I also have a 2-year-old named Mia. Now, my older daughter actually started preschool for the very first time earlier this week, and you know, life happens. I have just not had the time this week to sit down and actually plan a full-on Montessori video like I normally have for you guys every single week. But what I do have for you is a good old-fashioned Q&A session because I know you guys love those. So I popped onto Instagram yesterday and put up a what do you guys want to know questionnaire, and I got a ton of responses back from you guys. So what I'm gonna try to do for this video today is just get through as many of them as I possibly can, kind of quick fire style, just a nice short and sweet answer. I obviously am not gonna get to all of them because I literally had like hundreds of questions, but I will get through as many as I possibly can in the time that I have to film this video. And then for any of the ones that were related to like really hot topics like sleep training, potty training, eating, independent play, all the really big ones, I have actually done videos on all of those topics already. And I know that some of you are new to my channel, so you might not know that. So what I'm gonna do is put links to all of those really popular questions that I get to the videos that I've done where I've answered a lot of those already. I'll put those links in the description box down below. This way, if your question wasn't answered in this video, but you're still just dying for an answer, you can go down and check out one of those videos and see if perhaps maybe I already answered it in those previous ones. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so here are all the answers I got from you guys, but I'm gonna try to get through as many of them as I can. So first one, and if you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading the question on my phone, is from Jen's Right. How early can babies sleep on floor mattresses? It depends on the family. It is totally up to you and what you're comfortable with. So there are some Montessori families who will have their newborns from the day that they come home from the hospital sleeping on a floor bed. And if that's something that you've set up, you feel it's safe, you're comfortable with it, go for it. There are also many families who kind of take a middle ground approach, as I do, where the baby sleeps in the parent's room in a bassinet or some like a Moses basket, something where they're, you know, able to be safely sleeping in the parent's room for at least 3 or 4 months before they eventually transition them out of the bassinet into their floor bed in their rooms. And they'll start at nap times and then maybe eventually work their way up to night times as well, and then they're sleeping in there full time. So it's totally up to you. There's no set black and white answer to that. The next question is from B. Zeus. It says, tips for selecting activities that are developmentally appropriate for the child, particularly for babies. Honestly, you can go online and probably just type in Montessori activities for, you know, 3 to 6 months olds or whatever, and you'll get a ton of blogs and articles with all kinds of ideas. But if you really have no clue, then I have a bunch of videos on my YouTube channel that address activities for all the different age groups, all the way up from newborns to the preschool years. So that can be a really great place to start, but there are also tons of blogs out there. There are a couple of really great ones that I will link down below that always have really awesome activity ideas that you can be assured are authentic Montessori activities or authentic Montessori inspired kind of activities. And then also books. The 2 that I think come to mind right away as far as like activity ideas are the Montessori Baby and the Montessori Toddler, both of which are authored by Simone Davis, and then the Montessori Baby was co-authored by Junifer Uzadege. So both great books, great resources, would highly recommend. I'm already thirsty. Next question is from K Savage. It says, how to incorporate Montessori when I'm away at work for 10+ hours every day. I've said this once, I will say it again. I've said it 1,000 times and I will keep saying it in my videos. You don't really need to do anything super special to be doing Montessori at home. Yes, of course, it's wonderful to be able to do all the little activities and have the perfect playroom, but that is not a realistic situation for every family, and that doesn't really make it any less Montessori. At its heart, Montessori is about following your child, offering them independence, involving them in your everyday practical life tasks. So anything that you can do to set up your home such that your child has independence in the various rooms of your home. Like, can they get dressed by themselves in the mornings if they need to, or with minimal assistance at best? Can they get up to the counters to get access to water so they can brush their own teeth or be able to look into a mirror and practice brushing their own hair? Can they assist with food prep in the kitchen, either just making their own small snacks or maybe getting up to counter height on a little stool where they can work alongside you at dinner time when you are home with them? Anything that you can do to give them those opportunities for independence is 100% doing Montessori. So that is something that you can definitely look into doing first and foremost. And then as far as the activities and things, if that's what you're really concerned about, then maybe just have a couple of activities prepared for the weekends, or, you know, one day where maybe you have off or something, and maybe bring those things out just on those days or during those times when you know that you will be there to observe and be able to take part in all of that. But otherwise, I I wouldn't really stress out about it so much. Like I said, independence, involving your child in stuff at home, that is going to go a long way to implementing Montessori at home, regardless of how many hours you actually have to spend with your child on a daily basis. Next question is from Corey Large. Keeping the kitchen drawer with kids' plates, etc. tidy when they want to pull it out all the time. I hear you on that one, but I will tell you it's a season. When they are little and they are enamored with pulling things out constantly and emptying drawers and cabinets, and that's just what they do when they're young toddlers, just trust me when I tell you, eventually they grow out of this phase. And in the meantime, the best thing that you can be doing is one of two things. A, modeling, putting them back when they're done so that they're constantly seeing it being done. And I know it just kind of feels like you're cleaning up for them. And in a sense, when they're little, you are. But they are always watching you. They're always seeing what it is that you're doing. And so you are still modeling that process for them from the very beginning. So just keep modeling, putting things back, as much as it might get on your nerves at times that you have to continue to do it. Just know that it won't last forever. And then the other part of that is perhaps maybe redirecting them to something that's more appropriate for whatever their urge is. So if they're wanting to constantly pull things out of the drawers just to pull them out of the drawers, then maybe you have an activity set up that focuses on that skill where they're taking things out and putting them back in. It's called in and out work, actually. It's like a actual Montessori activity. So you can set up something like that. But then I also know that toddlers sometimes will pull these things like the plates or the cups and the bowls out of the drawers because they actually want to use them for something else. Like I know my girls sometimes when they were littler would try to pull the utensils out constantly to go use them for Play-Doh, or they would pull the plates out to go use them like for their open-ended pretend play if they were like setting up a picnic for their animals or something. And so what I actually did was I created a separate set of play plates, which were just the little IKEA plastic plates. I was like, here, these are for you guys to play with and these are for us to eat with. And anytime I saw them going for the eating plates, I would redirect them to put them back away and then remind them that they had their play plates instead. And it didn't take very long before they finally understood the distinction and they stopped going through that cabinet. So it really just depends how old your child is and why they're pulling these things out, and that kind of should steer you in the direction of an appropriate solution. Next question is from Porkchop BT. It says, what are some ways to help your child watch you present an activity before they take it from you? Now, the answer to this question is dependent on your child's age. If you have a preschooler, they're much more likely to be able to sit still and actually watch you present a lesson for a couple of minutes before they take over and have a turn. And to do it is really simple. You literally just say, hey, we're gonna learn how to do this, or I'm gonna show you how to do this, watch. And then you do it and then say, okay, now you have a turn, or would you like a turn? And then they can take over. But if you have a toddler, this is very normal behavior. They wanna just jump in there and get their hands on it. They do not wanna wait, and that's totally fine. So if you're showing something to your toddler for the first time and they jump in there before that you feel like you're done, then it's okay. Just let them explore, take a deep breath, not a huge deal. You can always present the lesson to them again at a later time and then maybe focus on one of the other steps that you didn't get to the first time around before they jumped in, or maybe you can show them a couple of more steps and kind of add on to what you're showing to them before they finally decide to jump in. You just kind of have to feel it out and work with the situation. Something else that you can try with a young toddler that sometimes is a little more successful is to just put the activity out and allow them to discover it for themselves at first. Allow them to explore. And then if they get to a point where they look like they need a little bit of help, or maybe they're even getting a little frustrated, or they look like they don't really know what to do with it, then you can be kind of in the background observing and watching for that moment. And then you can take that opportunity to then step in. And instead of showing them the whole presentation, just step in right where they actually need help and say, would you like some help with that? Or do you want me to show you how to do that part? And give your child the opportunity to say yes or no, because sometimes they don't want your help, and that's totally fine. And when you do decide to step in, remember to keep it short and sweet because they're toddlers. So you're not gonna give them a big long-winded explanation. You're just gonna walk over and pick up the coin. Let's say it's a coin box. Pick up the coin and say, look. Oh, open up the drawer. Oh, there it is. And then take it back out. Would you like to do it again? And then allow them to take back over again. The next question is from Chihiro Saku. The keys to stay motivated at home as a mom, easier ways to make the toy shelf interesting and fun. I think we put a lot of unnecessary pressure on ourselves to keep our playrooms like super Pinterest worthy or Instagram worthy, where everything is really exciting and everything is themed and coordinated and perfect. And sometimes it just drives me crazy to even see that myself, because I don't do any of those things. Like, I think that it is perfectly perfectly fine to literally follow your child's interests. So if your child is happy with the things that you have on your shelf and you don't end up rotating for a couple of weeks or months even, I think that's okay. Honestly, I don't rotate my girls' shelves very often to keep things fun and interesting. I just kind of observe periodically to see what it is that they are gravitating toward and what it is that they're just kind of ignoring. So anything that starts collecting dust and has been sitting there and not touched for a while, then I will take that away and bring out something new. And on occasion, I find that the girls are just kind of ignoring the playroom as a whole. And it could be because they're more interested in like going outside and doing more gross motor stuff, and that's fine. But if we're like in the house, they don't really seem to have a desire to be outside, and yet they're still ignoring the things that they have, that's a pretty clear sign to me that it's time for a rotation. And so then we will do like a much larger rotation. But the point is, you have to rotate according to your child's interests. That is the most important thing. So don't stress yourself out over, not having super fun and interesting, things that you saw on Instagram. None of that is really necessary per se to be implementing Montessori at home. And if they would rather not play at their shelves, like I said, my girls sometimes do, if they'd rather be running around the house or going outside or, doing spins and jumps and climbing all over everything, if that's their season right now, if that's what they're interested in, then that's what's most important. Forget about the play shelf. It's not really a big deal because kids go through phases. Eventually they will migrate back to the shelf. And then at that point, you can assess what their current skills are, what the things are that they look like they're working to master, things that interest them, and then you can coordinate the activities at that time. So you really just have to play it by ear, honestly. I know for some people that might not be an easy answer to hear because it's not like black and white, but honestly, I think it makes me feel a lot less stressed out because then I don't have to worry about all those other things. I just have to focus on my child. Next question is from Sweet Disposition 97. What if I can't find or afford a Montessori daycare and preschool? How do I keep Montessori at home? So you do not have to send your child to an actual Montessori daycare or preschool or any kind of school for that matter in order to be doing Montessori at home. They are honestly two very separate things. And that's kind of what I focused this entire channel on, is how to implement Montessori at home specifically, regardless of what kind of school your child is going to. The one thing that I want to reiterate that I kind of already mentioned in an earlier answer to a question is that Montessori is more so about providing independence for your child, involving them in practical life, giving them opportunities to feel successful, to feel independent at home. That is what is most important. And that you can do regardless of what kind of a school your child is going to or what kind of a daycare. Now, if your child is going to a traditional school or daycare of some kind and you still want to incorporate some of the Montessori style activities at home, you can most certainly do that. It doesn't have to be like full on authentic Montessori. They can certainly be Montessori inspired kinds of activities. Again, I have links in the description box down below to some great blogs and Instagram accounts where you can get some really great ideas. But I do think that a lot of people tend to think that it has to be like, the whole shebang in order for you to be doing Montessori properly. And that's not the case at all. So whatever you can fit into your family's schedule and make it work for you at home, as long as you're focusing on that independence piece and involving your child in the home and giving them autonomy, that is what is going to make the most difference, no matter what kind of schooling your child is receiving. On the flip side of that, if your child is going to a Montessori daycare or preschool, then you want to make sure that you don't have the really super authentic activities at home. You kind of want to save those for the classroom so that they're special and interesting and engaging when your child goes to school, and they're not like, I've already seen this at home 1,000 times, and they're not really interested in it. The only exception would be obviously if you're homeschooling. But if you're sending your child off to a preschool, then maybe just stick with more of the independence and practical life stuff at home and focus on that and leave the Montessori activities for school. So I think that kind of addresses both sides of that question, just in case somebody was on the other end of the spectrum and wanted to know. Next question is from Sage 11. Anything that's typical Montessori but just really hasn't worked for your family? I don't really feel like there's anything that hasn't worked for our family. Like, we love the Montessori lifestyle. It works very well for us. But there are two things that I think like maybe aren't as Montessori that we do anyway, but I don't think it makes us any less Montessori, if that makes sense. And those two things are screen time and the kinds of books that we read. So in a Montessori environment, they really eschew this idea of offering your child screen time, especially under the age of 6. I most definitely allow my girls to have a limited amount of screen time. They're only allowed to have 1 hour each day, and it is vetted things that I'm okay with them watching. They do not just have free reign of an iPad ever. And that's something that I feel works for me as a modern parent. You know, I work on my phone, I work on my computer, and as much as I try to do that when the girls are not around, they do inevitably see me on my own devices periodically. So I would almost feel kind of like a hypocrite to be like, no, you can't have screen time. So I feel like it's a good compromise. It's a good middle road for us, for me to make sure that they're getting quality screen time as far as the things that they're watching, and that they're not spending too much time on it, and that they're learning to use it responsibly as they get older, as opposed to just, you know, being allowed to do whatever they want with it, which I don't think cultivates the right approach or attitude. And then the other thing are the books that we read in our home. So in a Montessori environment, you're supposed to focus on realistic things and really shy away from the fantasy stuff. So making sure that books have actual photographs and realistic illustrations and actual storylines that can happen in real life, and not really offer them things with, like, you know, unicorns and dragons and fairies and talking animals and things that just could never really happen. And in our home, again, we take a middle of the ground approach. So when I'm buying books or when we're at the library checking out books, I specifically look for things that are based in reality. Those are the things that I want to offer to my girls as much as possible. But inevitably, they come across a book at the library sometimes that is completely fantasy-based, that's about unicorns. And you know what? I just don't feel comfortable telling them, no, you can't check that out. Like, it's just some horrible thing. I don't agree with that personally. But what I will do is make sure that as we are reading those kinds of books together, that I'm checking in with them periodically, and we're having those conversations about the fact that they aren't real. So we'll say, you know, do unicorns really exist? And they're like, no. Or, you know, do these animals actually talk in real life? You know, can turtles talk? No. So we have those conversations, and I do it often enough that I'm hoping eventually, by the time they're 6, obviously, they'll have that cemented, that that is not real. And then at that point, they will also be developmentally ready to understand those kinds of things. Next question is from Tamar Chobanyan, and it says, when they prefer one parent over the other. Let me tell you, I have experience with this. Both of my girls were complete mommy's girls for a very long time. My older daughter actually refused to go to my husband for anything and did not want his help with anything, all the way up until she was like almost 3. And so that was pretty tough. My younger daughter, she was definitely more attached to me when she was still breastfeeding, but once that was over, she gravitated to my husband more readily. And now I would almost say she prefers my husband at times to me, which is really strange for me because my older one never did that. For us, it was mostly about respect of our child's needs in that moment. You know, when they were glued to me, I could see that my husband like almost kind of felt hurt a little bit sometimes that they didn't want to go to him. And I would always just try to remind him, it's like, it's just a phase, you know, she's just a baby or she's just a toddler, like it won't always be this way. It was a lot of reminding, and eventually, like I said, they did come out of that phase and they did eventually go to him, and so he was able to see that for himself. But it did take a very long time and a lot of patience. You really just have to try to empathize and respect their feelings and just go with the flow, because like I said, it's not going to last for forever. So, you know, in the moment it's, you know, oh, you really want mommy right now, I know, or oh, you really want daddy or nana or whoever their caregiver is that they prefer. You know, I understand. I can see you're really upset right now that she's not here. Or if the other parent has to take over and it's the parent that's not preferred, again, you're just empathizing with their feelings. Yeah, I know mommy always does bath time. You really want mommy to help you with your bath, but daddy's gonna be helping you tonight. And then just leave it at that. You know, they might be upset about it and that's okay. They're entitled to their feelings. They are entitled to express them, cry, whatever they need to do. You're just there to empathize with them and support them as they express those emotions. And eventually it's like a roller coaster, you know, they'll come out on the other side, they'll be okay. And the more times they can experience that, you know, they were disappointed by something that didn't go their way, they didn't have mommy or daddy even though they wanted them, but then they realize, hey, I'm okay, I came out of it and you know, the world didn't end. And so the more times they can experience that, the more they get used to it. And like I said, eventually they do grow out of it. So hang in there. I know it's not easy. Next question is from Ms. Tagliolia 21. Will Mike be coming out with any new stuff on Montessori and Me? If you are new to my channel, you have no idea what she's talking about. My husband Mike and his business partner Andrew have a business called Montessori Me that they started about 1.5 years ago now, I think. They launched with 2 Montessori products, an object permanence box and a Montessori inspired letter tracing board. And then they recently launched a number tracing board as well, but they haven't come out with anything for quite a hot minute. And yes, they have a bunch of things that they are hard at work on. There's just a lot of testing and red tape that you have to get through in order to produce things that are intended for use by children, like safety standards and things like that. And they want to make sure that everything is good to go on that front before they launch it. So there are a ton of things coming very soon down the pipeline that I'm not officially allowed to share with you guys yet, but as soon as we are able to, then I will absolutely make sure that we share with you about it. In the meantime, you can keep an eye on their Instagram or their website for yourself if you want to. But yes, they are coming out with more stuff, so stay tuned. Next one is from Amy May. Oh, my battery looks like it's about to die. Joy. Anyway, it's from Amy Maids, how to create a space for a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old that's safe and fun. So I have a whole video dedicated to this topic, which I will link down below. It's called Managing Siblings. But I wanted to give a quick little answer to this in the Q&A anyway, because I feel like maybe it's not as obvious that that's in that video. It's primarily about making sure that the stuff for your older child is up high, maybe like on a high shelf where only the 2-year-old can get to it, 7-month-old can't. If you do have things that are a little bit lower down that you're worried about your baby getting into, then maybe you put some of the small pieces that might be choking hazards into a small box or some kind of a container. I really like the snap locking containers because toddlers seem to be pretty good at getting those open by themselves, but babies can't. So putting small pieces and things like that on the trays with the activities, this way, you know, the big pieces are out, your toddler has access to everything they need, but yet your baby can't get to anything that could pose a choking hazard or some other safety issue. And then on the bottom of all of your shelves or bottom of whatever, you know, you're using to store activities, wherever it is that your baby has access to, just make sure that those are all things that are safe for your baby to get into. So it could be some stuff for your toddler, it might be stuff that you store for your baby down there, maybe it's like community things that they both like to play with, but just make sure that those things are safe. And then as far as keeping things fun for both of them at the same time, I really just tried to focus on having a variety of activities out on the shelf that met both of their developmental needs. So I would have some of the baby toys like down below that were very easy access for my baby, and then I would have things that were more appropriate for my toddler up on the higher shelf, and that was kind of at their eye level. So think about it from an eye level point of view, like what can your baby see versus what can your toddler when they're walking around readily see, and that was kind of where I decided to put things. But really just focus on what their interests are and what skills it looks like they're trying to master in that moment. Those are the kinds of activities that you want to have out, and that will keep things fun. Next question is from What the Chug. It says, will your children go to a Montessori preschool? Yes, my older daughter just started at a Montessori preschool this week actually, and she is absolutely loving it. My younger daughter is not old enough to attend yet. She's only just about 2.5 now, so she will be attending next year once she is 3 years old. Next one is from Katie Montgomery 2720. Do you have to go 100% all in? Short answer, no. I think that it is perfectly fine for you to pick and choose and do things that work for your family and your schedule and your personal circumstances. You know, not everybody has the time or the budget to have, you know, all these perfect Pinterest-worthy spaces in their homes, or maybe they don't have any time at all for activities and they can really only focus on, you know, just making sure that their home is set up for their child's independence and maybe involving them in dinner prep when they get home from work. Like, I think that's okay. I think whatever you can do, anything at all, is going to be beneficial for your child in the long run. Obviously, the more you can do, the better, but I still think there are benefits either way. So no, you don't have to go 100% all in. Do what you can and you're still doing something, and I think that that something is worth it. Next question is from Ashmita and Dramahan, and it says, which Montessori syllabus to choose for homeschooling? So I would not consider myself a homeschooling parent this year. I was last year. I did a little bit of like informal homeschooling with my daughter because she was supposed to have started preschool preschool, and then we unenrolled her because of the pandemic. So I kind of pieced it together. I wasn't like 100% prepared per se to be homeschooling last year because that wasn't the plan. But what I did do was take an online course before I got started, just so that I could feel as prepared as I possibly could have been. And I never, ever share things with you guys that I don't personally have experience with myself, that I can't personally speak to. This course is something that I can speak to because I did the whole thing. I took the Child of the Redwoods homeschool primary course last year in the fall, and it was fantastic. Now, keep in mind, there is no set curriculum in Montessori because you're following the child, you're following their interests, and every child is different. But if you're looking for something to guide you as far as like how to make it work for you in your home and like the general types of activities that you should be offering in the various different subject areas, if you're looking for some of that kind of general guidance and you want to feel like you know what you're doing, I would highly recommend this course because I definitely felt very empowered by the time that I was done with it. I was like, okay, I can do this. Aubrey Hargis is the one that teaches the course, and she is a certified Montessori teacher, a mom of 2 boys, older boys, and she's had a lot of experience doing this, and she is just a wonderful person. So if you are interested in that, I will put a link to it down below. She is super cool. The course is awesome. I cannot recommend it enough if you are going to be homeschooling for this year and you're not quite sure where to go and you're looking for a good starting point. This is a really great resource. So definitely check that out. Next up is a question from Coffee Love Motherhood. It says, bedtime, my kid uses all the excuses to stay up and play. I can feel you on this one. My older daughter used to do the same thing, especially when she was a toddler. Now that she's in preschool, she's actually a lot better about it. I'm sure not all preschoolers are the same way, but this was an issue primarily when she was a toddler for us. And here's what I have to say about that. Kids know their bodies. They know when they're tired. They know when they're not tired. And I know sometimes that littler kids, they do get a little bit more worked up when they're overtired. But I don't know, I feel like at some point there comes a time where your kid knows that they genuinely aren't tired yet. Or maybe they think they're not tired and they're bugging you to stay up and play for just a little longer. They don't want to go to bed yet. Honestly, I chose that as something that I didn't want to be a battle for our family. I wanted to respect my daughter's knowledge of her own body's cues. And so when she said, I'm not tired yet, I want to stay up and play, instead of telling her, no, you have to go to bed right now, what I did was I said, okay, that's fine. But what I want you to do is when you get tired, I want you to turn off your light and then you can put yourself to bed. So you can stay in your room, you can play for as long as you want to, but you need to go to bed when you feel like you start getting tired. And she was like, okay. And when it first started, she would stay up for maybe like 15, 20 minutes, sometimes a half hour at most. She would just play in her room because I could see her on the camera. I would watch her. She would just play in her room with whatever she was doing. And then when she got tired, when she was a toddler, sometimes she would actually just fall asleep on the floor, and then I would have to go in there and move her to her bed and shut off the light. But I would honestly say that was probably a pretty rare occurrence. After a while, she like understood the routine and she would just take herself to bed. She would shut off her light because the light switches down at her level. She would shut off the light and then she would climb in bed, and that was the end of it. And these occurrences started happening less frequently over time. And then eventually it got to the point where it was really rare. And when she did ask to stay up a little longer, she would only play for like 5 minutes and then she would get into bed. So I think that that was a really fabulous solution because I was empowering her, like I said, to listen to her own biological cues, to recognize when she genuinely felt tired. She was listening to her own body, and then she was taking the responsibility to then go ahead and put herself to bed. Now, the one thing that I would say is that you have to make it abundantly clear, and I did this as well, that they understand that they're not allowed to leave their room unless it's for an emergency. If they want to stay up and play in their room, that's okay, but they're not allowed to leave. If they do leave, then you are going to have to be there to kindly redirect them right back to their room again. And you don't need to make a big deal out of it. You just need to bring them back to their room and remind them that they need to stay in their room until they're ready to go to sleep, and that's it. Now, on the flip side of it, if you do have a child who stays up for a really, really long time, like completely calls your bluff and they're up to like, 10, 11 o'clock, and then they're exhausted the next day, then that's a really great time to have that conversation with your child. You say, well, what do you think? Why do you think that is? And then if they don't come up with that idea on their own, you can lead them back to the idea of, hey, well, maybe it's because I stayed up too late. So it's kind of like a natural consequences thing where they're experiencing the natural consequence of staying up late all by themselves, and they can kind of start to see it. So again, just trusting that our children know their own bodies and giving them the freedom that they need to kind of figure things out for themselves within reason, of course, and under your guidance. The next question is from Onishigi. Can I apply minimalism and Montessori at the same time? Yes. Often Montessori and minimalism actually go hand in hand, because in a Montessori environment, we're always going on and on about how less is more. And that is also the mantra of minimalists. I am not like a full-on minimalist, but I am definitely a minimalist at heart. So I am always looking for ways to declutter and have less out at one time, because the fewer choices your child has in their play or in their clothing when they're getting ready for the day, the easier it is for them to actually make a choice. It's less overstimulating for them. And when it comes to their playroom, the less you have out, the more they're able to focus and concentrate on the things that they do have. So minimalism is actually a really beautiful complement to the Montessori approach. If you're looking for some inspiration as far as applying minimalism and Montessori at the same time in your home, like full on, I would highly recommend that you check out my friend It's Huli Williams on Instagram. She has a beautiful feed full of really gorgeous minimalist style photos and tips and ideas for you that are all from a Montessori angle, because she is a Montessori mama of 2. So definitely check her out for some more ideas on that. Next one is from Jessalee Fegan. It says, what do you look forward to each week? I know mine are your videos. That's so sweet. Oh my gosh. My thing that I look forward to, honestly, 2 things. The weekend, because my husband is off of work, and so we get to hang out as a family, and you guys always get to see that too, because that's when we vlog. We like to just relax and have a good time, do something fun with the kids. It's a good break from the day-to-day grind from Monday through Friday. So I look forward to the weekend, and I also look forward to sleep. If we're being totally honest, I don't get a ton of sleep as much as I would like to, just because what I do here on YouTube, everything that is required, all the behind the scenes stuff, all of the editing, it takes me into many, many late nights. And I'm often up later than I want to be, even on my nights off, because I'm like, yes, I have a night off. And so I want to do all the things in that night. And then I'm like, why is it already 12:30 or 1 o'clock? I should be sleeping right now, because I have the opportunity to sleep right now. So I look forward to sleep when those opportunities do arise. And primarily now that my daughter is in school and we have to get up early in the morning, that's something that's new for us. I don't get to sleep in anymore. So now it's not only going to be the weekends, but it's also going to be sleeping in on the weekends just a little bit longer than we normally get to Monday through Friday now. Ooh, I like this question. It's from Raising SK. It says, what does Kylie's Montessori school day look like as per their schedule? So what she does is I drop her off in the morning before 8:30. At 8:30, all of the kids are expected to go into the classroom and sit down for morning circle time. And from what I understand, the teacher is already in there waiting for them at the circle, and the assistants are the ones kind of helping the kids get into class and get settled. So she goes in, she puts her snack box in her cubby, and she puts her water bottle on this little holder thing that they have over by the sink. And then she goes and sits down for circle time. Once all of the kids are there and everybody's ready, they have circle time. From what I've gathered so far, they either read a book or they have some kind of little small group lesson. And then from there, they transition into the work cycle. They have their work cycle for, I don't actually know exactly how long it is, but they have the work cycle for a good chunk of the time. And during that time, they're being given individual lessons by the teacher, or sometimes she'll do a little small group lesson with a couple of the kids at a time. I think on the first day, they did a whole group lesson on the nod cylinders or something, just to get them used to the idea of how to go get a mat. Oh, they also practiced rolling and unrolling rugs and stuff. So she kind of gave them an orientation on the first day as a group. But from what I understand, the last couple of days, it's just been the normal thing that you would see in a Montessori classroom, where they're doing things by themselves and getting individual lessons and working on what they want to work on. But anyway, at some point during the work cycle, if she is hungry, she's allowed to go grab her snack and sit down and have her snack by herself. I think they normally do group snack, snack, but because of the pandemic, they're not doing group snack this year. At least that's what we were told. So it's an individual snack right now. So she just eats when she's hungry. And then eventually at some point it turns into recess time. So they go out, there's like a little playground attached outside of their classroom that's like just for their classroom. She did mention that they have all the kids go to the bathroom first. So bathroom, recess, and then after recess is over, then they come back in for gathering time, which basically to me just sounds like a second circle time, where they do another like small group reading or activity or a game of some kind. She said that today they did a game where they all had to close their eyes, and then the teacher was walking around the room ringing a bell, and they had to point wherever they thought they heard the sound coming from with their eyes closed, which I thought was really cool. So they did that for their second circle time today. And then after that, it's already like 11:30 is when I go pick her up. So they get them ready for dismissal, and they gather all the kids and get them ready, and then they wait to be picked up, and that's it. So that's their schedule. Next one is from Joyful J. Do your girls ever not want to be independent, and how do you handle that? Yes, there are times where my girls are fully capable of doing whatever it is that they're trying to do. They've done it 1,000 times by themselves, and sometimes they just decide they don't want to do it by themselves. They would rather have my help. And when that happens, I try to be as respectful as possible of their needs in the moment. Like, you know, maybe they're having an off day, or maybe they're feeling a little jealous and they are seeking connection time. And so the way that they're doing that is by asking for my help, even though they know how to do it by themselves. I just try to be respectful is the point. So when they do ask me for help, I help them. I do try to make sure that I ask them specifically what they want help with. This way, I'm not just assuming that they want me to take over and do everything for them. So I'll say, oh, what are you having trouble with? Or I'll just say, what do you want help with? And maybe sometimes it's just like a small part of something. They don't actually want me to do everything. And so I'm still kind of putting the independence back on them after I've helped with that small part, but then I step back and allow them to take over again. But on occasion, yes, they do ask for help with something that I know that they know how to do, like putting their pajamas on, for example. Like they've been doing that for forever. But you know what? It's not really a huge deal. And they don't ask me every single time. It's not a habit. It's not an expectation. You know, 9 times out of 10, they're doing these things on their own. I just try to remind myself that our children are human beings just like us. And this is actually something that I heard from Jean-Marie Paynel from Voilà Montessori in a workshop one time that I had never forgot, because I'm like, it's so true. Like sometimes we know how to cook for ourselves as adults, most of us do anyway. We know how to cook, but sometimes it's just nice to have somebody else cook for us. Sometimes we just don't feel like doing it, okay? And our kids are like that sometimes too. Yeah, they know how to get themselves dressed, but sometimes they're just not feeling it. They just want a little bit of help that day, and there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, it happens from time to time, but it's really not a big deal. For today, the last question is from, I have no idea how to say this, Emma Simmancy? M. Sinmancy? I have no idea, I'm so sorry. But the question is, if you're on a budget, what is one Montessori item worth the splurge? The first thing that came to mind for me, because this is something that my girls literally use every day, multiple times a day. It is like the most used thing in our house, is our kitchen learning tower. I know that they are a little bit on the more expensive side compared to some of the things that you could buy for a Montessori home, and so a lot of people tend to not get one because it is more expensive. But I do know that there are a lot of options available now on Amazon compared to back when we got ours. Like there's a ton of them at a whole bunch of different price points, and so maybe you can make one of those work for your budget. I know that Sprout also sells one, the same company that makes like the wardrobe and the floor bed that we have at home. They also have a learning tower that I think looks really fabulous, and they even have a value grade version of it where I'm not exactly sure what makes it value grade, but I know that it's a little bit less expensive than their like standard one, so you could check that out. And if you know somebody who is handy with wood, there are about 1,000 tutorials now online for how to make your own learning tower. And you know what? Even if none of those works for you, I have also seen people just use like one of those 2-tiered utility step stools, like the folding ones, or they'll just use their kitchen chair, honestly, and they're just making sure that they supervise their child. But if you are looking to actually like buy one, then I honestly do think that the Learning Tower is hands down like the most useful thing in our home, and that's where I would spend my money personally. Okay, so I hope you found my answers helpful, and if you're interested in seeing a part 2 Q&A video, maybe for some of the questions that I wasn't able to get to today, then I could definitely make that happen, maybe even for next week's video. So just let me know in the comments down below if that's something that you guys want to see. And again, if you had a question about something related to independent sleep or independent play or toilet learning or getting your friends and family on board with Montessori or the Montessori approach to eating or positive discipline, anything about that, I likely have already answered your question in a previous video that I did on one of those topics. So I will put links to all of those videos in the description box down below. This way you can quickly navigate to whatever topic it is that you're looking for and hopefully get some answers that way, because chances are I probably went into a lot more detail in those videos anyway than I would have in this quick Q&A. And if you are interested in learning more about doing Montessori at home or positive discipline parenting, I also offer a couple of e-courses that walk you through it step by step. So I'll be sure to leave links to that in the description box down below as well. And finally, just in case you are new to my channel, I also wanted to let you know that this video is part of a much bigger series on this YouTube channel called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori at home with our children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in learning more about, then you might consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.